afternoon. I want to acknowledge and thank, first of all of you for showing up today. It's beautiful outside, and so you're inside with us most likely, but we will stick to time. Welcome to today's event, Creating Communities of Care in Our Classroom. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Mellon Foundation. It's through their generous support that we are able to have the Transformative Learning in the Humanities Initiative. And speaking of TLH, I want to acknowledge also our leadership, Shelley Eversley, as well as Kathy Davidson, Jessica Murray, and Christina Catapodis, along with our ASL interpreters for today, and our captionist, Drew Ivers. If anyone needs multi-pin access, please message our co-host. Please message Lara Saguisag, and she will be able to get you accommodated. So my mama always taught me to not be in a room of strangers, right? To make sure that we foster this sense of community. And with that, I want to introduce myself. I am opening our event, although we have a few hosts. My name is Jason Hendrickson, one of the TLH Mellon Fellows. And at this moment, I want to invite my colleagues who will be presenting to introduce themselves. And so with that, Lara, you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lara Saguisag. I'm a associate professor of English at the College of Staten Island.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Smith. I'm an associate professor of English at Baruch College.
Hi, I'm Reiko Tahara. I'm an adjunct faculty in the MFA in Integrated Media Arts at Tahanta College.
And I neglected to mention that I am associate professor of English at LaGuardia Community College. And so it's a pleasure to have all of you. And so I want to also give an overview of what's going to be happening today. And you'll get a sense of where we're going. We're going to start, of course, with our welcome. And we're going to begin in a moment with Lara's presentation, students' perception of care in the classroom. I'll follow up talking about language as empowerment. And Reiko will follow with student-led classrooms as a practice of care, followed by Cheryl Smith, who will be talking about poetry as a practice of care. And then we're going to jump into open conversation. And one thing I neglected to ask and get a sense of, I know we're on Zoom, but let me get a sense of how people feel. Let me ask you, what one word captures how you are feeling right now? It could be tired, right? It's that midday siesta. Let me know that you're here. Let the room know that you're here. How you feeling? Excited. All right. Nervous, chill. Let's see some adjectives. I just got out of teaching my class. So glad that you're excited to be here, Charlotte. Hyped. That's that good energy. Okay. All right. I'm loving that we have all of this. And we have 40 active participants in this space. So I don't want to disrupt anyone's calm or laid back. I'm just going to pass the mic over to my colleague. And Lara, please go ahead to start and bless us with your presentation.
Thank you so much. Let me just start by sharing my screen. Thanks, Jason. And here, let me begin. So my presentation today is about how my students in my young adult and environmental justice class perceive care in the classroom. And I want to start by actually, before I share what my students think about care in the classroom, I would like to invite workshop participants to fill in these blanks so that you could share your perceptions with us. Like, so for you, what is care in the classroom? So if you could complete the sentence with a word or a phrase or a clause, care in the classroom is blank, or care in the classroom means blank. If you could share these ideas in the chat, that would be great. Because I want to get a sense of how those of us in in this workshop perceive the act of care. So, it's listening to students, being present. Care in the classroom is empathy. Yes, it is empathy. Wonderful. Um, Care in the classroom means mutual respect. Oh, I love this. Them coming. It's understanding, meeting students' whole selves, honoring differences, making time, being open to new ideas, decolonial love, engaging with the individual. Oh, this is so wonderful. Please keep your ideas coming. I will make sure to review everything after my presentation. But in the interest of time, I do want to move forward and share our students' perceptions of care in the classroom. Um, so for what this is what care means for my ENL 323 students. That one, it is about getting more motivated. As one student put it, students feel motivated to reach their full potential. Um, and motivation was like a theme that kept repeating itself in the students' responses to my questions about like what care means for them. Um, so it's like care can be a great motivational factor. The feeling of care, it motivates you to want to keep going and doing what you have to do because someone cares. And as one student also put it, we have to consider that there are people such as myself who work a full-time job and often have a hard time juggling work, school, work, and free time. There are also many students in college who are full-time mothers and work as well. Some of us may struggle with mental health, and care in the classroom contributes. Contributes. I can't see because of to the motivation we need for school. Um, for other students, care actually fosters rather than inhibits intellectual growth. As one of my students put it, care is in no way coddling. Um, Another student said that care doesn't mean you lose all standards and lower expectations. It means allowing people to be human. And finally, one other student said care does not mean easier coursework, but rather is about the setting in which the student is working and the relationship that coexists between student and teacher. So for students, it's not about the quality of the care. Care is about setting the conditions for the fostering of intellectual growth. Um, Care for students also means getting a sense of belonging and community. As one of my students said, this class has shown me that I'm not the only one who is struggling in these times, and that felt comforting and allowed me to progress forward. And one student also said that care promotes understanding, respect, encouragement, support. During discussions, there is understanding and respect of each other's view. There's encouragement and support through group activities, and most of all, we all have a voice. And I also asked my students, in what ways then did they, in what ways did they feel care at work in the classroom? One student identified, so just like the check-ins the temperature check-in that Jason did to open our event today, the students felt that these check-ins were a work of care. One student said there was one time when you began the class by asking us how we've been feeling during the semester, and you made us take a poll, and that day made us all realize we weren't alone, and we all feel the same way, and made me same. It made me gain an understanding of the students in the class and the professors feeling as well. And what I love about this, it's like that the check-ins didn't just allow the students to share how they were feeling, but also allowed them to exercise compassion for others. Another student identified how diverse reading lists and content warnings are a part of this work of care. As the student put it, an educator who cares whether or not their lesson or lecture may be offensive. They care whether or not their content is up to date with current events and information, and they care if their students' experience is positive or pleasant. Students also felt that being allowed to participate in various ways through the chat room, through activities like Jamboard or Padlets, breakout groups, online polls, collaborative note taking, and not just oral participation was a way for helping them like feel cared for in the classroom, because it was a way of respecting each student's approach to learning and offering more than one way to participate. To decrease the stress and anxiety associated with being vulnerable sets students up for success rather than an easy failure. And finally, students also identified how the self-assessment forums and one-on-one conferences that I was having with them this semester. So in these self-assessment forums, these are really exercise in self-evaluation. We would have these weekly forums that they would fill out to tell me about how they were learning, what they were learning, what their strengths were, what their points of improvement are. So they said that these forums and these conferences gave them an opportunity to communicate, reflect, and be honest about how we are feeling, what we think we are doing well with, and what we can improve on, and even let us expand on our thoughts, etc., to the outside world. And one student also said that self-assessment is a form of care because we can self-assess and self-improve without a professor telling us to do so. And I love this sentiment because it felt like, you know, my interpretation was that the student felt empowered to think about the ways that they could improve and do better in class without necessarily a professor dictating to them how they should improve and how they can do better in class. I will start wrapping up. I do want to end with a note on the cost of caring. I have to admit that this has been a very exhausting semester for me. To do this kind of care work, I think does require a lot of labor, a lot of emotional labor, especially for somebody like me who is not trained in counseling. And in doing this work of care, I sometimes feel that I'm wearing multiple hats, that I have to be a social worker, a counselor, on top of being a professor. So this is something that I would like to acknowledge. And one thing that I do is I do share my limitations with my students. I do tell them that I'm also going through struggles. I do remind them of my own humanity as well. And there's sometimes like a way for me to tell them like the reason why I set certain deadlines, as much as I try to be flexible, is because I also don't have like, just like an enormous amount of time that I do need to set aside time for checking my students' papers as well. So in a way, I'm asking my students to also care for me. But more than that, I think this cost of caring is making me think that it's not enough if we're making individual changes in our classrooms in isolation. What we really need is collective and institutional changes.
1 minute.
I feel that what we should do is work collectively to normalize care in the classroom and not see it as anti-intellectual or non-intellectual work. I also think that one way that we could further work towards work of care is developing peer support groups, where we could all talk to one another about like developing good practices of care in the classroom. Also advocate for lower class caps so that we could pay more attention to our individual students. And also give recognition to teaching as equal to, or dare I say, more than research. I think we need to recognize the labor that goes into teaching. And finally, advocate for more staff and support for campus resources such as the counseling center, food pantry, the LGBTQ resource center, the women's centered childcare, etc. I do have other things to say, but I want to make sure that I give my colleagues time to present as well. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your comments during the discussion portion. Thank you.
And thank you very much for that, Lara. I'm going to keep this moving by asking you to answer this question in the chat. We're going to have a little roll call of sorts. And that's, what languages do you speak? And just throw them in there. Don't sleep on languages if you think that they're a Creole language or what's called a pidgin language. I want to get a sense of what languages here are represented, and I'll explain why. That language is my form of care. I'm a native English speaker, but in teaching at LaGuardia, where we have nearly 100 languages represented, I began to realize how much of a privilege it was to speak English, to be a native speaker in a space where English is often my students' second, third, even fourth language, and realizing as I tell them that I, in some ways, teach what might be the most oppressive course in the college. And I say that because your voices matter. And by me teaching and saying this is what's correct and not correct, I'm in a position of power. That kind of stifles my students' voices unless I say, hey, your voice matters too. So I'm going to take the voice away from myself and spotlight my students who are going to talk a little bit about language, power, and care in the classroom.
On community and care in the classroom. Good afternoon, and welcome to this segment on community and care in the classroom.
Being a college student in America, I've always known I've exercised some sort of privilege. However, I never really understood how much privilege it was until I learned about language privilege in my English 101 class.
I didn't really know much about English privilege for the class. I didn't even know it was a thing that existed.
See, when many people hear the word privilege, they think about the privilege that comes in race, gender, sexual orientation, or another means of socioeconomic status, and I don't blame them. I was there too. However, many are unaware that privilege can actually exist within language as well, specifically the English language.
I am bilingual and English is my second language. I'm an immigrant and a first-generation college student. One of the challenges that I face as a non-native English speaker in this country is not being taken seriously in different settings.
Being an English native speaker, we have so many advantages that we seem to have effortlessly, such as easier access to admissions from competitive international institutions. Simply because we already speak the English language, there's going to be more accommodation for us. It's easier for us to get jobs because we're already viewed as the more favorable candidate because of our accent, and because people could associate America or the English language as being more high class. And society in general just tends to view us in a more favorable way. It comes as no surprise that we're more likely to be treated better.
Another challenge that I face is an internal one. Sometimes I feel like I have a lot of ideas in my head, but I choose not to speak because I feel like I can't properly express myself verbally. I don't speak a lot because I am very conscious of my grammar and my accent, and I don't want people to mock me if I make errors while I'm talking. In addition to that, I also feel very inferior to all the native English speakers that I speak with.
Native speakers have a significant advantage over non-native speakers. And we learned how that creates conflict because it leads to accent discrimination. For example, in Mother Tongue by Amy Tan, we learned about how you can be denied services and respect just because of the way you sound, just because of your accent.
One time, I was in Trader Joe's, and the cashier was friendly to the white customer in front of me. They were chatting and laughing, but when it was my turn, I greeted the cashier enthusiastically, and I said, "Hi, good evening," but he didn't respond to me, and he even frowned. And he didn't speak even a single word to me and my mom for the whole transaction.
I grew up with Hispanic family, and I've seen this myself too. I connected to this article a lot. How you can be denied respect just because of the way you sound when you shouldn't be denied respect for the way you sound, but for the actions you do.
I'm from Juarez, Mexico, which is the border town of El Paso, Texas. I grew up in Juarez till I was 8 and moved to El Paso due to the war on terror. My first year in El Paso, I had to get held back a grade because I didn't know any English. This resulted in me being older than everyone for the rest of all my classes. So this explanation has to be given all the time.
That reading, it definitely like brought up a lot of things I felt growing up with my mother's language and how she speaks her English.
Moreover, I think that communicating on behalf of my family is also a challenge for me because it takes so much of my time that sometimes I feel like being the eldest child in an immigrant family is a part-time job. Even though I'm very anxious to speak, I am compelled to do all the talking, the complaining, the emailing, and stuff like that for them. Prior to moving to the US, I used to be very confident. I used to speak up my mind and I used to participate in discussions a lot. However, when I got here, everything changed. I didn't want to talk anymore. I didn't want people to hear my accent because I didn't want them to think that I'm fresh off the boat or anything because I feel like they'll think lowly of me if they learn that I'm new here. Before our discussions about language in English 101, I thought everything I was experiencing was just about me and how badly my self-esteem got hurt. I didn't know that language privilege and accent discrimination actually exist.
It confirmed to me that a language can't be broken. And my mother is an immigrant who came to this country about 20 plus years ago, and she learned her English from what she saw and what she heard and what she experienced. But it just confirmed to me it's about dialect and it's about accent. It's not about a language being broken.
After reading the texts that Professor Hendrickson assigned us, I was very comforted to know that I'm not the only one who's going through this and that my way of speaking is not a disability. Rather, I was reminded that I should embrace it and it's a big part of my identity.
There is a lot of things I've taken away from this class, more than I thought I would, just because this whole big fear of being in college and it being so difficult, or just having professors that just will teach you just to teach you versus teaching you because they care.
Language diversity allows for more education and more empathy as well.
Professor Hendrickson has always kind of encouraged me, and I have never felt like judged or anything from him or for any of my classmates in the classroom. And this is something that I really appreciate, like a lot. It makes me feel comfortable. It really makes me to participate and to be part of the class and not just be there because I have to, but because I really like to be on the class.
It's something that really intrigued me because I wouldn't have known that someone's social status or someone's life or the opportunities that they could have in life is based off or can be based off how they speak how they speak English or what their English accent sounds like, based on whether or not English was their first language or not.
I believe this is an important discussion to have because having privilege means we should be able to check our own privilege, acknowledge our own privilege, and not take it for granted.
And I'm not the only one who took away from this class while we were in Zoom class. My mother would also hear the professor talking, and she definitely took some things away that she was able to hear. And for one of the things which she did not know that the English language is an official language for the United States. And she definitely took that to her chest and her person, and she had ever since has been using that for herself, just as a reminder to not take anything from anybody when they say to speak English.
I will say that more implementation of multicultural classes should be increased in order to develop more empathetic students.
I think it would be helpful if the government were to put more attention and focus into adding more foreign language education to schools. That way we can increase more awareness about the issue and combat language privilege as a whole.
From this class, I'll take away that to respect each other and to have patience with each other and to treat everyone equally. I have a newfound respect for non-native speakers, and help out your fellow non-native speaker. You never know what they could be going through.
All right. Thank you very much to all of my participants. And I'm going to just keep it on time and pass this over to Reiko.
Okay, thank you, Jason. That was great. And I'm gonna keep my dignity as an accented person, and I'm gonna go on. So my presentation is based on the current class that I'm teaching. It's called Documenting Histories Asia, Asian America. It's a brand new course. We are still kind of developing. But what's particular about this class is the student-led classroom that we are trying to consciously create. So I would like to talk about it. But before I go on, I would like to do some survey here, poll. So this is for the faculty members. Do you feel your class contents represent your students? 1, yes, 2, no, 3, somewhat, 4, not important to me. Just 10 seconds poll. So please just type in the chat. And this is for the faculty members. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, so you can keep typing, I guess. So this is a question for the students. Students, do you feel represented in your humanities courses in general? A is yes, B, no, C, somewhat, D, not important to me. Cool. Cool. Okay, so I'm sure people who are coming to this room, must be doing something awesome. So in this course, we learn histories of vast Asia and Pacific Islands, including West Asia and their diaspora communities, while pondering how film can be an effective medium to retell our histories. I developed this course over the summer with my amazing teaching mentee and co-teacher Yahui Zhao. Encouraged by the TLH Fellowship, we have been implementing many new things and trying to always include indigenous, women, queer, and ordinary people's stories in many countries. But in terms of creating a community of care, I feel the biggest success for us for now is how our student teachers, I use this term adapting Paulo Freire's book. So how our student teachers are creating the class contents and feeling part of the community. So each week, 1 to 2 student teachers would take a 15 to 20 minutes long recorded presentation to provide the historical context on the region or people that we will learn about so that we understand the films better. And this is no easy task when the histories of India or China is like 3,000 years old and 4,000 years old. But all of we all do our best and sometimes divide up the job and try to grasp the flow. So another student teacher would have a 30 to 45 minute slot to lead the discussion on the readings. So the class time is pretty much spent by the students. In addition, we decided to stretch the idea of student-led education further this semester by redoing the class contents on the Indian continent, Central Asia, and Japan, and adding Taiwan after the semester began. Because we figured, we couldn't tell from the roster, but once we met, we figured that many of our students are coming from that region or from that country. So we decided to invite them to co-curate, changing what we have already done. So we emphasize that you don't have to feel responsible to represent your people, but can select a few historical events that you feel important or you want the class to learn about from your personal perspective, and then we want to work together to select films and text accordingly. So the enthusiasm was beyond our expectations. And for example, for Taiwan Week, we had I thought pretty good list of films and films, but the 2 Taiwanese student teachers we have shared list of 30 films with us. And like, so we are learning a lot about Taiwan now. And it's been an intense and busy semester, but the level of everyone's understanding in those weeks is pretty profound. So I recognize that this level of co-curation is possible only because we are a small graduate seminar course. And I don't think I can do this every semester as a struggling adjunct. And to our regret, we failed to invite some of the student teachers with great knowledge on certain people of regions for the co-curation process because of the timing. It was too early in the semester, or because we prioritize the people from there. So it is not perfect, but this deep collaboration with the diverse student body that CUNY offers made me realize how one-dimensional our syllabus would have been if I was the only author. And it made me rethink of the meaning of representation and made me wonder what it means to make our curriculum diverse and inclusive. I am thankful to the TLH team and my department for giving me the opportunity and motivation to try. I also can't thank Yahoo enough for their efforts. And now I'd like you to meet some of the members from our class. I hope the care for each other can be felt in their voices. Lydia Khan is a Korean Russian who was born and grew up in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, lived in Russia and migrated to the US in the 90s. Cheryl Cross is a Caribbean American who spent part of her life in Jamaica. And Yahweh Zhao is from Shanxi province of mainland China, living in the US for many years. So, and they are all great creators. And I'm gonna share screen now.
It was great. It was a lot of work. Makes me feel like my opinion and my contribution mattered, with help of other people who are not connected to the Central Asia as much as I do, make me think of some of my perspective maybe being a little biased or not. I'm bringing my insider's look, but I'm also dealing with people who are outsiders and answering their questions. Certain things that I've taken for granted, I realize were very new to others. I feel like this is more of a shared experience and shared responsibility. So I feel more involved and I feel more interested because I contribute. One of the classmates is very quiet during the lectures, but then when the student was a discussion leader, like suddenly great conversation, very articulate, those great questions were asked, and something that would probably wouldn't be possible to discover if the student wasn't given like the time and opportunity to actually lead the class.
The feedback that I got was that the questions that I asked were really good. So that made me feel good that I was in the right direction. Obviously, I'm not Asian, so I can't speak to certain things. Like when we have conversations of, what it's like to be a part of a marginalized group, like I can chip in and, relate to that. But for me, I look at it as this is a space for me to learn, especially like during the first question that I asked, where that specifically was a question that kind of talked about like the Asian American experience. For me, as someone who's not Asian, I felt like it was my duty to listen. If I have questions, ask questions. I think that's how we learn, sometimes you just have to be quiet and listen. We're definitely learning new stuff. I remember in one of the first classes we had, we watched a few documentaries of Asian Americans and how like they were protesting, and I think that was like the most surprising thing to me, just because I've never seen that or heard about it. And that just made me realize how much we don't learn about Asian American history. Before we really start class, we always go around and, ask, how's everyone doing? How's everyone's weekends? We're all learning from each other. So for example, like I know the class when we did India, Parth being South Asian, he was able to shed a lot of insight. I believe one week we had, was it Japan? And Satoko was able to, shed a lot of insights. I think that's one of the interesting things, that we're not just reading a bunch of things and watching a bunch of things. We actually have people who can, give us a perspective, from a personal standpoint.
There are so many things that I learned from this experience and I'm still learning and processing. But I think the one thing that I kind of refresh my idea of teaching is that the work that as teachers to put into the class is really outside of the class, is really in the curation and preparing process. And because only in that you put as much energy and time and intentionality as possible in creating it, only that during the class you'll be able to give the freedom to students for them to lead this class space, for them to become the center of the class. I think that's the biggest thing I learned. And I think that's the right way to be as teachers. And I think that in that way, students can feel that, everybody can feel that their voice and their opinion has a weight in class, and everyone is unique. So in that space, the freedom that we were able to give to students, I think that's something is just really important for artists, because artists need this freedom of learning and freedom that carries on to freedom of creating, which I think are so interconnected for their future projects and career.
Okay, thank you so much. So with I'm the timekeeper and I didn't keep my time. So take it over, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reiko. That was amazing. It was beautiful. I also want to acknowledge and thank some of my students who are here today. And I think we're going to hear from some of them reading their poetry. So I'm going to talk about poetry as a practice of care, as a form of self-actualization, of putting your voice into the room, of being a creative, expressive, fully present person. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why poetry is so important to me. But first, I want to thank Rachel, Malachi, Daniel, Abigail, and Samantha from my advanced essay writing class, who I believe are here today. I saw them come in, and Julia, Bella, and Miriam from my Arts in New York City seminar. Thank you guys so much. They answered the call and came out, and it makes me feel cared for to have you here with me. So poetry for me, I believe in a poetry for the people. I'm inspired by this project by June Jordan. She was a poet and professor at CUNY before going out to California, and she started up a project called Poetry for the People. It was to bring poetry to young people, to foster poetry in them. I've inspired by many of the poet teachers who have a history at CUNY, from June Jordan to Audre Lorde and Adrienne Rich, the way that they brought poetry into the classroom as a means to bring voice and beauty, the aesthetics of language. We all have access to not only language to communicate, but language to create, and to create beautiful things and to express our own ideas, lives, and identities in beautiful ways. And it's really important to me. So every day, or as much as possible, I try to bring poetry into my classes, which are not poetry classes, but certainly poetry belongs everywhere as far as I'm concerned. I really like to try to get to a place where we're doing collaborative poetry writing. So I've been inspired by the surrealist practice of exquisite corpses. I'm putting a little link in the chat now. MoMA has some great resources on exquisite corpse drawings. And these are collaborative drawings where you are not seeing what other people are writing on the page. You're just seeing the edges. You're connecting to those edges and adding to the drawing. And together you create a fully realized collaborative piece of art. And you can do that with poetry as well. I do it by having students just write. They come in, everyone write a first line of a poem. And it could be drawn from the reading that they're doing, their favorite line in the reading, a piece of writing that they're working on, an object that they're writing about. If they're writing a profile, which we're doing in one of my classes right now, they write a line to the person they're writing about. They express themselves to that person. They pass the page. That's the first line of the poem. They pass the page to a classmate who writes the next line. folds it over the first line. So the next person, the third writer, does not see the first line, is just writing a second line or a third line in response to line number 2. And it goes on and on and on. Everyone only sees the line right before yours. But in the end, you create this beautiful, collaborative, accidental, and moving piece of writing. And it also lets students kind of explore what's going to happen to their idea, to this germ of an idea, or this passion that they have, or this interest they have. If they pass it around the room, kind of telephone style, what journey will it take through that room? So it gives you kind of insight into an original idea, and you see where it takes you. It also just builds community, right? Every day you get a poem in your pocket. When you do this, you get a gift of a poem to take away with you. And you are writing it collaboratively with your classmates. I just feel like it's a way to build community. I always, or almost always, participate when we do these poems, and I cherish the poems that I've written with my students in my classes. I'm always excited to get my poem back and read it. And we usually share these poems. So I'm going to do a really quick experiment where we write one right now in the chat. I will write the first line, and if you want to participate, you have 30 seconds to write the second line, but don't send it yet. Just write it in the chat, but do not send it. Okay. So here's the first line. When day comes, we ask ourselves. It's the first line from Amanda Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb. I thought it would be a fun one. If you want to write a second line, write it in the chat, but don't send it yet. And I'm going to tell you when to hit send, and serendipitously it will fall into a poem. Who knows where your line will be? But we will create a poem together, and then I'm going to turn it over to my students to hear some of their poems. So get ready, Rachel. I'm going to turn it over to you first. Okay, everybody hit send. So Rachel, are you here?
Yes, Professor, I'm here.
Do you want to share your exquisite corpse from our class?
Yes, of course. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Reading my exquisite poem from Professor Smith's class, A Letter to My Future Self. I want to write to tell you that you are driven for success. Your definition of success is what you believe in. So what gets you out of bed in the morning? The warm sun on your face and the wind swirling through your hair. I am lost in the ether. Thank you.
Malachi, are you here? Would you share your poem? Thank you, Rachel.
I am. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. So my poem, I also wrote this in Professor Smith's class. I think this was the first or the second class meeting. But my exquisite corpse is titled Headphones. So headphones, I listen to the sound flowing through the speakers, light sounds filling the air, tickling my ears, lifting my soul, radiating joy, energy carries me higher up, in need of fuel for fire, in search of burning light. I find my way home I find my way to my home, safely sound home.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you. I love that. Miriam, I think Miriam, you're going to share a poem.
Hi, Professor. Yeah, I was going to share the objective poem that we wrote in class.
Great.
So I wrote, you gave me the necklace that made me smile every day. I thought the necklace was unbreakable. It ripped. Forgive me. I loved it, but now it is gone.
Thank you so much, Miriam. I just know a bunch of my other students are here. Does anyone else want to share anything before I wrap it up?
I also had my object poem ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is that Julia?
Yes, it is. Hi, sorry.
That's okay.
So yeah, I took a similar approach to Miriam's, but mine is, sorry, I've stuck those stickers to the car. I know how you like it, clean, boring, plain windows, but the stickers tell my story. So fun, vibrant, and wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. I loved hearing your poetry. See, poetry just makes everything better. Any other students want to say anything? Thank you so much for all coming. Anyone?
Hi, I didn't have a poem ready, but through watching the presentation, I noticed that Professor Smith follows most, like, I think when I walk into the classroom, I really do feel cared for, and it actually feels like a safe environment to where I can speak my ideas. And that's really what I use my writing to do, because I don't like expressing myself that much physically. So I did find it really comfortable that I could write whatever I wanted, and she always made me feel welcome.
Thank you,
Can I-
Daniel.
Can I add to that as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I'm a senior. I'm actually in my last semester at Baruch College. And even going through the entire process, there's always gaps and holes in my knowledge. And I always had a little bit of fear whenever I entered into the higher level English courses that maybe what it is that I wasn't so sure about was going to come out and I'd be exposed that maybe I'm not as good as as everybody thinks I am. But in Professor Smith's class, we always, go over the basics. And I always feel like I'm allowed to ask whatever question it is that I have. And I don't feel any type of way when we're going through the discourse or we're going through the explanation. And I think for that, it really creates that supportive feeling. Like I'm excited to show up to class because I know that I'm always going to be learning. And even if I'm not learning these huge giant things, I'm learning things that are going to really affect my writing on the day-to-day process. So I really appreciate the class for that. It feels sometimes more like a workshop than a class. And like, I love that.
Thank you. Oh, I was inspired by this book from our TLH, the Anti-Racist Writing Workshop. We have been doing work from there, Malachi. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Less than 1 minute.
Okay. So I'm just wrapping up. Any other student want to add anything? I love hearing from you. Thank you all so much for coming. I feel cared for.
Hello, everyone. Hello, my name is Samantha White. I'm in Professor Smith's advanced essay writing course. And I just wanted to say, entering the course, I didn't feel like I was an advanced essay writer, but Professor Smith makes us feel comfortable, and she positively reinforces our identities as writers and makes it more comfortable for us to work together by having us do collaborative work in her class. And also I appreciate the way that she internalizes some of the comments that we make on our writing or on our class blog. One time I criticized Stephen King, who dare me, but I did. And she internalized what I said about his platform and influence. And she said, going forward, she would be mindful of that when she is grading students' work and critiquing students' work. And I thought that was really cool because not a lot of professors do that. They're more educated than we are, and they assume that everything they say is absolute. So I really appreciated the fact that Professor Smith had, a bit of humility and expressed it.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you all so much. I think that I'm going to wrap it up there so we can open it up to some discussion. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. So now we have very short time, but let's open up. We're gonna have an open conversation now. So whoever who wants to, ask questions to the speakers or comment on, your thoughts, share your thoughts, just please keep it less than like 30 seconds to 1 minute would be great. So please raise your hand so that I can point at you. Kimberly?
Yes, hi. I am in English 101 with Professor Hendrickson. I just wanted to comment and say that this is my first year in college, and I've always had, I guess, never been able to speak so out loud or raise my hand so quickly. But coming into this class, I actually have spoken way more than I ever have, and just being able to put my opinion out there is a very, very fruitful, amazing and cool thing I'm able to do. And he definitely brought that out of me with his subjects that he has been teaching with English, different language barriers, and all these other lessons. So I would like to just say thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome. And thank you, Kimberly. I'm glad that I stayed late. Supposed to be picking up my daughter right now, but that was worth it. I'll explain that to her.
If you want to say something to, Professor Hendrickson, say it now before he leaves. Now. Anyone else?
Feel free to also put that question in the chat if you have any, and doesn't have to be a question. It can also be a reaction. It could be what's on your mind. What are you feeling as well? So just put it out there. This is how conversations start. And thank you all.
I'm going to comment. I was very impressed when I learned about, Professor Hendrickson's, the language diversity, language justice. And I think it is so profound to have, that kind of course and be confident when you're young and, speaking your mind and be proud of the language. So I just wanted to say thank you to you for doing that. I will try to copy, which is, I don't teach English, but, I think the spirit can be copied. So I'm going to copy it from next semester. Thank you.
Thank you. And also thank you, Reiko, for that. I was struck by students who realized that they could be marginalized, yet also need to listen, which I thought was really profound. And the energy of creativity that came out of that. Same goes for Professor Smith, which reminded me of my old poet spirit. So I'm glad that you were able to share in the spirit of June Jordan, the great June Jordan, as well. And I'm just looking at the chat to see what folks are also saying. So there's a lot of gratitude happening.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I posted, I cleaned up and reposted our exquisite corpse that we wrote all together. I put it in the chat as well, so you can see it.
And also, I wanted to comment on Sharice's comment. And yes, this week's class, I was really worried how non-Asian students, have been feeling in the class. And we had a very honest conversation, and everyone said a similar thing. It's like, they were there to listen. That's what everyone was feeling. So I was very moved by that gesture, and it was very, very nice to talk with everyone in the class. And thank you for student teachers who are here from my class, Suzanne, Fozia, and I'm sure there are other people too. So thank you so much. Michelle too. Thank you.
Do we want to wrap up?
Oh, and so we would like to share the survey. And there is a student survey, for students, post-event survey. So if you can, please do. So.
And also, I'm going to complicate this for faculty. In the spirit of inclusion, there is a survey for you. So I will post that in the chat as well. Faculty and staff can answer this.
Ooh, another question came in the chat in the meantime for Lara. Your presentation mentioned how creating communities of care in our classrooms requires institutional change. Would love a follow-up session devoted to strategies for making that happen. That's a great idea.
Yeah, thanks for that suggestion, Belkis, because I think we often put the onus on just like individual professors, and I think that's part of the reason why we end up getting exhausted, and there's so much focus on like self-care instead of community care, and I think making these collective and institutional changes is really necessary for us to create more caring classrooms, so we're not just doing these projects in isolation. Thank you for that, and we'll bring that up with TLH having a follow-up session. Thank you.
Any other final questions? I'm going to actually share my screen and just say, it says hi. Like if we could do some final kind of takeaways. What are you going to take away from this session with you? What's in your mind? What's on your mind? Just shout it out.
Care in the classroom goes both ways.
Thank you, Samantha.
I think that I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel lucky that throughout a good portion of my high school experience, and now that I've entered college, I've had some really good professors and really good teachers that have made me feel like very respected and very understood. So just reflecting on it, I realized how a lot of my teachers in the past have also been very kind to me. So I consider myself very fortunate.
The little things count.
Little things?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bella, I see your hand.
Yeah, just that it's really great that like this conversation of like trying to figure out like creative ways to make the classroom setting like even more, I guess, like caring and like empathetic is really important. And I'm just, like Julia said, like really grateful I'm in Professor Smith's like IDC class, and I'm really like thankful that like the classroom is filled with like so much like mutual respect for one another, both between like me and my classmates as well as between us and our professor. And just the fact that like even things that are like go beyond, I guess, like the actual like academic learning can be just as important for us as students to experience in the classroom setting. Like at the beginning of the year, Professor Smith like took the opportunity to meet with all of like us students like in smaller groups to try and get to know us like on a more personal level, which I thought was like really important and special.
I see some raised hands. Rachel and
Oh,
then
sorry.
Kara.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, Rachel and Kara and Mariam.
Thank you. I would just like to say that professors are also humans too, and they always try to put their students' need at the forefront to try and help them to express their values more often in their class to better understand them on a personal level and not just on a professional note throughout their classes. And Professor Smith is a good example of that in her English class that I'm currently taking with her right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Kara?
It sounds from all of the presentations that the culture of care in the classroom takes an awful lot of time that needs to be either carved out or included in what the syllabus actually means.
Like intentionally included, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Was there another person?
Oh yeah, I wanted to say that I've had teachers before that made students feel as if they weren't good enough and they judged them very harshly based off of work because their opinions didn't match the teacher's opinions. But Professor Smith, she always makes us feel like she wants to know our opinions. She wants a different opinion on everything and constantly wants us to interact with each other. And I feel very lucky to be in an English class where I'm constantly told that my ideas are good and they're never judged. So thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. So if there's anybody else who wants to say the last word?
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so should we close now?
I think so.
Okay, well, thank you so much everyone for coming, and thank you for the speakers to share your stories, and let's care each other. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so
Bye
much,
now.
everyone.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
coming.